Okay, we're going to start our meeting. It is 6:35, and the Urban Design Commission meeting for April 9, 2014 is called to order. First, we need to start with roll call.
Mr. Sawhill?
Here.
Mr. Tiber?
Here.
Ms. Sullivan?
Here.
Ms. Emerton? Mr. Winchester? Here. Ms. Ream?
Here.
Mr. Condon?
Here.
Mr. Leonetti?
Here.
Thank you.
I would like to announce that we have a quorum this evening. Next in the agenda, we move to the minutes. We have 2 items in the minutes. Can we get a motion to approve the minutes? We have a motion for approval by Thomas Tibor and a second by Nicole Rem. Did there's any disclosures? Did there's any discussion to follow to the approval? Okay, so now we move to disclosures. Do we have any disclosures this evening? Nicole Rem, please.
Yes, on the case on the regular agenda this evening, which is the 2014-046 site plan and landscape plan review for Chester Creek Sports Complex, I will continue to recuse myself from this since we are managing the project.
Any other disclosures? No? Okay, so we have excused in the prior meeting Commissioner Nicole Rim, so we don't need a motion to recuse her. And now we are moving. Sorry. Commissioner Ed Leonetti, please speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have the same disclosure as before, which is for case number 2014-046, that I've had professional associations with the petitioner's representative. I have no financial or personal interest in the matters or in the case before the board.
Since you don't have any financial, you were directed to participate in the case.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Madam Chair?
Yes?
I think we need to act on Nicole's, conflict of interest. I think we need to have a motion, we need to have a vote, and we need to formally deal with that. She was previously recused, so we need to do it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, we are moving forward to the consent agenda. We don't have enough quorum to approve the consent agenda, so we are going to postpone the case for the next meeting. Also, we are going to postpone to the next meeting the annual election of officers, since we don't have the chair tonight. And we are moving to the regular agenda. We will be reviewing case 2014-046 site plan and landscape plan review for a public facility, Chester Creek Sports Complex parking area and Mulcahy Stadium reconstruction. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, Madam Chair. This submittal is in response to UDC directive to the applicant to return for redesign. This case regards the DDSR for the Chester Creek Sports Complex and the public facility site plan and landscape review of Mulcahy Stadium. Since the case was just before the commission a couple of months ago, I won't go into a lot of the points that were raised earlier, and I'll just try and concentrate on the information that's new with this submittal. regarding the shuttle buses, could address the inadequate parking via drop-off for large events at the stadium, but a specific location has not been designated for shuttle bus drop-off and pickup. Currently, bus drop-off for the CCSC occurs to the north of the Sullivan Arena, although in a discussion with Michael Spackman, who's a landscape architect with U.S. Cage, he indicated that buses could be directed to the A Street driveway and passengers could disembark in front of the Anchorage football stadium. In this situation, vehicles may not have access to the A Street entry when shuttle buses would be dropping off passengers there. The preferred alternative shows a one-way driveway that connects from A Street to Gamble Street, and this was something the Commission asked to see the last time the case was before them. An asphalt parkway is shown on the north and south sides of the driveway. Pedestrian scale lighting is planned along the north walkway. The pedestrian connection continues to the western part of the site and ends east of the AFS. The proposed Gamble access does not include a pedestrian walkway. The new entry from A Street greatly aids ingress to parking areas and distributes incoming traffic. The narrative notes that this entry could be gated to allow use only during large events when parking is in high demand. This entry requires the relocation of Kosinski Field 3 to the south, approximately 50 feet. The ball field relocation will in turn require the relocation of the existing trail south of the ball field. This trail connects the A Street Trail to the Chester Creek Trail. Vehicles using the entry driveway would drive through the pedestrian plaza to access parking. The driveway is intended to function in a similar manner as F Street between 6th and 7th Avenues downtown. It would generally be a pedestrian zone that would be used on occasion by vehicles for access to parking for high-capacity events such as graduations, Fur-Ronde, or ACES games. Spectators may enter the stadium via a new sidewalk along the south side of 16th Avenue. The sidewalk leads from a small parking lot along 16th Avenue that provides 25 spaces. The traffic division noted that the dead end will be problematic once the parking stalls are full, as it will be difficult for vehicles to turn around and exit. And so if you look in your packet, there is a kind of a preliminary design that shows a hammerhead design to solve the issue. The parking lot shows 2 underground stormwater infiltration galleries. Once bids are opened, if the cost exceeds the budget, then storm runoff will be directed to rain gardens in the same locations. On Exhibit E, site plan shows snow storage on the pedestrian plaza. Snow should be removed from the site. Using the pedestrian plaza for snow storage will result in damage to the concrete. Temporary snow storage should be located in the parking lot, with snow removal occurring within a few days. Thank you.
If there's any questions to staff? Is the petitioner here? Can you come forward, please? Will you state your name and spell it for the record?
Madam Chair, my name is Dwayne Adams. I'm with U.S. Cage representing the petitioner, and with me tonight is the project management team from PTS, Dean Cars and Nicole Rim. Additionally, Mr. John Rod of Parks and Recreation is with me if there are questions appropriate. I think staff has done a pretty good job of addressing most things. There were some key issues that were brought up by the Commission that directed the redesign. And so what I'd like to do is touch on those. The first question was whether the parking, which we have oriented so that drive aisles were east-west, whether that same direction shouldn't be extended all the way to Sullivan Arena, and so the parking lot will be restriped all the way to Sullivan Arena so that's included. So we have addressed that. Another item that was addressed was a commissioner request that we not isolate the handicap parking places from the stadium entry itself. In essence, if people are driving in and handicap have to cross the drive aisle, are they going to be seen? Why should they have to contend with that? To address that, what we've done is we've shifted the whole stadium to the west 20 feet, and in doing so, that allows us to capture that 20 feet as a handicap parking area. The intent is that handicap parking area, as is common with many handicap designs, stall designs in the city, would be flush, so that in events, it's possible that that whole area could be used for, depending on the event, for events if necessary, if that's not where, if the handicap spots weren't needed. For example, at a graduation ceremony or something like that, that's probably not where the handicap spots are going to be in demand. They're going to be over by the building. And so it does allow, having them flush then allows some flexibility with the use of that space, and it would be signed so that either the signs could be removed or it could be on an event-based basis, which is what we've done at a number of schools where we've been putting football stadiums in, for example, so that when there's not anything going on, it might be able to be used by others. But we are providing for that specific request of the commission. One thing that was, I think, bandied about by the commission was the parking space, or those parking spaces that staff referred to up in the northwest corner. We've retained that. It doesn't have two entries now because of how that complicates the A Street entrance. Anyone who's tried to get out of that at the time that a major event is going on and everyone is exiting knows that that probably is not the most desirable relationship. Thus, there's only one entrance well back of the actual 16th A Street intersection. So that's in there right now. We still feel it serves a viable purpose and would suggest that it should remain, and leave that at that. So those were three of the keys. Now there was one other that was the one that I think garnered the most comment, and that was for an access off A Street that would be south of Mulcahy, reflecting what the 2006 study had shown. So what you have before you and what you see to my left is a plan that shows that that's possible, that we can do that. In order to achieve that, what we do is we shift Kaczynski number 3 50 feet, and in doing so, that open space between Kaczynski number 3 and the Mulcahy Stadium, and as a result of that, we can get a one-lane drive aisle that would allow ingress to the parking areas. It enters then a plaza, and that plaza then would appear and would be designed much as F Street is, so that it serves what's often called a market splat, and meaning, it's a people place, it serves markets, but it is also a drive aisle when we want it to be a drive aisle. So it does allow for that to take place. Now, the reality is that while we have that, there's a number of concerns that we have. Number one, these are pretty tough economic times. This project certainly wasn't scoped to provide for that, or we'd have brought that forward. So there was a recent bond, and that bond unfortunately doesn't appear that it may pass, and some of that money was denoted for this project. So, a constrained project is facing even additional concerns for funding. So we aren't confident that there's going to be funding should we choose to try to construct that. There's also a couple other things that complicate the issue, and our intent was that this be an event-based entrance only, but as you see, I think staff provided you an email that I provided them this morning. DNR is the authority who makes a determination with respect to the land and water conservation issue and whether something is in compliance or not and is considered a conversion of use. And in their view, it would not be a conversion of use if it were open all the time. We aren't confident DOT is going to be on the same page with us on that, nor the Sullivan Management Group. And so this complicates that issue. So that's one thing that we're concerned about is the resolution of that issue and how easy that's going to be to achieve. Another issue is that there is a proposal, some of you may be familiar with it, by the Fairview Business Association for a parking garage, and this actually seems to have some purchase and is still moving along as though this is going to happen, and there's a lot of, I guess, financial backing that seems interested in making that happen. Now, I don't know that it will, but that's another complication to this. So in that email that I sent you, what I've asked is that we possibly leave that door open. We aren't denying that additional access isn't appropriate, but in light of all this, and in light of that the study is a 2006 study, we've tried to respond to the Commission's interest by showing that, yes, we can achieve that. But what we'd like is a little latitude for us to resolve this. We're not going to be back to you for probably 9 months or so with a final submittal. We have a lot of design before we get to that point. So within that time, what we'd ask is your agreement that, as opposed to making that a conditional approval, that be an absolute, that we have what we've provided, and that would be worded as follows: prior to final submittal, resolve methods and means of providing an alternative access to CCSC parking. Coordinate with the key affected parties, including but not limited to ADOT, MPF, MOA Traffic, Fairview Business Association, and Alaska DNR. And, you know, we want to operate within the good spirit of what's intended, and we want to resolve those parking issues, and certainly the state and the city want us to do that. But there's a lot of balls in the air, and I'd rather not come back with a design that's completely alien and controverts what you directed us to do. What I'd like to do is to receive a little leniency with respect to that and use this language as a condition of approval so that you have the teeth to make sure it's considered. You have proof that we can do this by shifting that field to the south, but we would like some latitude to investigate other alternatives. So those are the key points. There are a number of other issues that are conditions of approval, and some of those I think we're addressing as we go. For example, the wrought iron fence very well may change to something else as we look at the realities of budget. Wrought iron's pretty expensive stuff. Certainly the benches are no issue really, and is a very good recommendation. The easement, or excuse me, the street right-of-way, that needs to be resolved regardless. So with respect to those other issues, we don't find anything that we can't live with as we move forward into design. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions or refer them to an appropriate person.
Thank you. Do we have any questions to the petitioner? Commissioner Ed Leonetti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hello, Mr. Adams. Welcome back.
Hello, Mr. Leonetti. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
I have a couple of questions, or a slew maybe, and as surprising as that might be, I will ask a couple, and then if there's some that come up from other commissioners, I will take a break. There was some considerable discussion in this. Well, let me back up a little bit. Holistically, I have two big picture concerns, which I asked at the last meeting, and would like some more clarification from you for further consideration. One of them is the location of the field. It seems as though that the new location of the Mulcahy Stadium shifted west. The orientation is in its orientation based on the fact of the review that you guys had with your sub-consultants that said this is a good orientation. The plaza out front is there for the Iditarod and some other things racing through there for being on the trail for the ceremonial start and other races. But it's still not clear to me why common functions such as plazas are not grouped together and why there's areas that are completely separated. One of the biggest ones is the pedestrian traffic. In the narrative, it was described that pedestrians are going to be collected from 16th Avenue and coming in from 16th Avenue when you talk about the Mulcahy Stadium. Yet when we're talking about the parking circulation and the way that people leave the stadium, there's less people out there. So my concern is that when people leave Mulcahy Stadium and they go to their car, they're going to be going past one of 4 entrances that is the only way to get out. And it seems like a conflict. And so that is one of the concerns that I have that is still not answered. Maybe it's 2 or 3. So help me out here a little bit.
As you can see, there's 4 east-west spines, I guess, for pedestrians to circulate. There's 16th Avenue. There's 2 center corridors that are water galleries, if you can, with pedestrian ways on top. And then there's the one down on the south. Yes, those pedestrians are transverse the direction traffic's going, and yes, they are crossing the primary travel path. There is it's very difficult to construct it otherwise, just simply by the fact that the way this whole complex works is we got a central parking area, which is really great for consolidating parking, but then all the facilities are on the outside, right? So we certainly could move all the circulation to one point in the center so that it's moving away from where people are coming, but then with only one exit, there's simply not the capacity to address the number of cars that are trying to exit all at once. So that's one of the key problems. Under an ideal situation, you would have a mass of recreation facilities, much as a shopping mall does. That's what is ideal. And then people walk to their cars from the shopping mall to their cars, and the exits are then distal from where the pedestrians are coming and then where they're trying to get to with their cars. That would be the ideal situation. And it always drives me crazy when I get into a parking lot and I try to do that and I'm directed all the way back to the entrance. I can think of another number of malls. I know why we're doing that, but it puts pedestrians in peril. But given that we've got the number of vehicles we do, our solution has been to try to provide as many exits as possible, thus the doubling the number of exits on Gamble and doubling the exits on the 16th, so that we have the flexibility of traffic flow to, number one, dilute the number of cars that are all now having to go through one exit or 2 exits, depending on which street, and lower the number of cars that are trying to get there, providing more order and more predictability in the traffic flow so that a pedestrian, it has refuge. Number one, we got these 4 galleries that people can walk through. And then with a predictability of flow, pedestrians know what to expect. And that's how we've addressed that. I don't argue that if you're trying to get to Mulcahy to your parking, you got to go across a drive aisle, but we can move that 30 feet distance, 50 feet distance. We still have that problem.
Yeah, thank you. I could envision that entrance or exit of the parking that's next to the plaza in that corner of the Mulcahy Stadium as being closed during exits. Yeah,
that was one point I was going to make through the chair, Mr. Leonetti, is that one of the concepts is that with 4 exits, we also have the flexibility of closing 1 or closing 2 so that we have the ability to moderate that flow depending on what we're doing. One of the problems now is there's so few exits, you've got to use those. If you don't use those, then You have no exit. So now we have 4 to the north and actually 3 to the east, although the northernmost does emanate from 16th. So, that provides some flexibility to close it as needed. So with respect to your question about Mulcahy, for example, you could close that one, and then that resolves the situation and use the next one to the east. Likewise, from Bokeh or from Sullivan Arena, you could close the one that's closest, then open those lateral to it. So their flexibility was part of the idea too.
Great, thank you. And then one other on this plaza main entry to the Mulcahy. Why isn't it located in the southeast quadrant of the ball field? Why is it in the northeast quadrant? The plaza.
This?
Nope.
This?
Why isn't it rotated down to share the plaza that's down there by?
Oh, okay, I see. So slip this down.
Yeah, not adjusting the edge of where the race comes through.
Just twisting it 90 degrees is what you're suggesting. Is that correct?
Yes.
It goes back to when we had a focus group of 15 people. I played Little League baseball and I played Pony League, but that's my extent, and I love watching Mariner baseball. Go Mariners. But beyond that, that's the limit of my expertise on baseball. And Southern California, when I was a batter, it seemed like I was always looking into the sun and drove me nuts. So that was one of the questions that I had was, well, what's the right orientation? So we had, the manager of the Bucks, we had the manager of the Pilots, we had American Legion Baseball represented, and we had Ripken Design Group. All these guys played baseball and are really smart about baseball, and I'll never second guess Cal Ripken, I can assure you that. So, I basically, as we looked at a number of different concepts as to how to address this is what came out of the discussion relative to a number of items. Among those driving it as much as anything else was retail activity. So how do we, the Bucks and the Pilots in particular, need a retail outlet that allows people to get close to that? And if we were to rotate that, then the Bucks or the Pilots, and third base is the Bucks line, the Bucks lose that retail frontispiece that allows people to visit their store in the off hours. So that's part of it, is that retail component. Also hitting home runs, foul balls land a little softer than home runs distant, and hitting home runs into 16th Avenue and into pedestrians was a little more problematic. It's better to hit them over into Anchorage Football Stadium or over into an open space. So that's part of it too.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ed. We're moving on with Commissioner Thomas Tiber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had 2 questions. So you had mentioned that there was a concern about the condition for specifying wrought iron fencing, budget constraints. So,
well, excuse me. Go ahead and finish. I'm sorry.
I just was noting that it says consider specifying it. It's kind of a permissive condition.
And that's fine.
What would be the alternative that you would consider to?
There's a number of things. Number one, you could certainly go to. There's a number of different products on the line that you can get that they don't have to have the pointy fence. So even if you use wrought iron, we don't have to do that. So that's not an issue. Up there right now is a chain link fence with a wood surround in it that gives it a nice look with, you can put vinyl fabric. That's a lot less. That's a third of the cost of the wrought iron fence. So there's a number of different products out there or design solutions that would meet that, deal with the moose or someone trying to break in there. You don't want to, impale them either. So, we can get the security we need without being too onerous about it.
Okay, thank you. And the second question that I had, see the issues that you're having with the getting some consensus on the additional access. And we were that was something that I think was a big concern for the commission when you were here last time was that southern, secondary access. And you know what and I don't see that the way your condition is proposed would facilitate this. But I guess my concern would be we wouldn't. I would be concerned that we would open ourselves up to a final plan that wouldn't have a secondary access. So the way I'm reading this is that one way or another there will be that additional access on the final plan. You want some flexibility to sort out the concerns of DOT and the and DNR and the business association. Is that correct? So there will be a secondary access that just what we're seeing in front of us may shift a little bit.
Correct. The way that this is worded doesn't say if desired, or there's no wishy-washy language with respect to whether it ought to be provided. It just says resolve methods and means of providing an alternate access. So, it's got the teeth in there that we've heard the commission. We understand your concern. We've demonstrated we can do that. I think there were two concerns of the commission, and one is that we're ignoring what was in our designs, or not our design, but the 2006 study, and that was one, and that if we did what we're proposing, there was not a way of coming back and addressing it. And so what we wanted to demonstrate is there is a way of doing that. We can shift it south. It's not an inexpensive solution, I can tell you that, because we do have to shift that field. We've got to build, extend the apron out. We have to move the fences. We've got to get good grass. We've got to do all that. We also have to relocate a trail, the Chester Creek Trail, but it's doable. We can do that. We aren't getting into the creek setbacks. We've got room to do this. So we wanted to address that second concern, which is we haven't precluded that. But also, it's a 2006 study. It's 8 years. It's going to be 9 years old by the time we get back to you. There's a lot of balls in the air, and there's some procedural issues between agencies that have to be worked out. So we just want some language in there so that you know that it isn't resolved. Even if we show it, it's really not resolved. And if we suggest, we can show it, but it isn't resolved. It's a difficult issue. But we do understand the commission. We want to provide language that recognizes that and that we take it to heart and we'll resolve it.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying for me. I don't have anything else.
Thank you. I just want to ask you a question regarding that question. The Department of Natural Resources wants to keep open to the public at all times. What's the reason for that? I mean, why would they want to keep it open versus closing sometimes?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The issue is that it deals with the issue of conversion of use. And just as some background, the reason Land and Water Conservation funding was established, and this gets back late 70s, I believe, there were a number of transportation initiatives. Cities were very tight. They didn't want to buy a lot of expensive properties. So what they did is they started putting roadways down parkland, and especially green belts. And in our city, there was a proposal to put a roadway all around the coast one time. There have been proposals that would use Chester Creek, for example, as a place to put a road. And you can imagine, if you're a Chester Creek user, how much of a gem that is in the city. And a lot of cities were losing precious parkland. So what they did was they established a fund at that time so that most of the funding that went into parkland acquisition or park development had this language on it. And in that language it said that if you provide a non-contributive use to that parkland roadway, for example, is there's 4F and 6F, the language of that Transportation Act that dealt with this, that if you do that, then you have to replace that both in quantity and quality somewhere else. And so, to really put teeth in it, the determiner, that the decider, I guess, is the National Park Service, which puts a lot of teeth in it. And the National Park Service has delegated that duty to the states and they have to approve who it is. And in this state is State DNR Parks, and they have to do an evaluation of whether it meets the requirements of that act and the administrative guidelines that have been published since. And so in this case, if what we're doing, and let me get another graphic here. If you look at this, everything within the pink is land water conservation funds. So if what we're doing is putting a road through here whose primary purpose is to get people to the Sullivan Arena, which is outside that pink area, it doesn't qualify. If what we're doing is providing a road that provides access or parking even within certain limits that serves those facilities that are in here, like the ball fields, then it's accessible to the point that we gate that off so that it's only open for use by the Sullivan Arena. It doesn't qualify and is considered a conversion of use, and then it initiates that requirement to buy additional land and build additional facilities. That's why.
Thank you very much. We're moving with Jim Sawhill. Commissioner Jim Sawhill, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I have a couple of observations and then a question. I guess the first is, one of my concerns was that parking in the northwest corner, and the feeling that space would be better served as green space as opposed to parking. I was also concerned with the congestion that the two parking space or accesses to 16th would cause. Looking at your redesign with the one access, I think you've largely satisfied my concerns, so those concerns have gone away. My next kind of observation is I kind of like the handicap spaces where you had them before, but I'm not going to make you a ping pong ball between two commission members.
Greatly appreciate that.
Your solution is fine. I don't think we should have people backing into main circulation aisles, even if it is low use handicap. I think that's a design decision I wouldn't make, but it's a viable option. I do like the fact that you made it flush, so in other times it could be converted to other use when there wasn't a requirement for those space. And I guess I would also like to share that I don't share Board Member Leonetti's concern over the orientation of the parking and pedestrians crossing into those aisles. I think that'll function fine. I think that's the correct orientation to encourage people to flow into Mulcahy Stadium and into Sullivan Arena. So I think that was a good decision, and I appreciate that part of this design. As you're aware, one of my biggest concerns was the inclusion of the secondary access to 16th. I think you've done a good job with this alternative you proposed. The alignment doesn't preclude construction of that at some point. I think it's important that when we add these additional 500 spaces, that secondary access is built. I think that's going to be very important to support the congestion that additional demand in this area is going to have. I always figured it would be only a high use time, and it would be closed and only opened when it was really needed. I think that's appropriate. I'm hoping that eventually you can get DNR on board with that. I would point out, although it would be closed to vehicular circulation, it would still be open to pedestrians and bikes, so it is not completely closed, and it does provide circulation to park uses, and that maybe DNR would get on board eventually. The other option, if they won't, is to find replacement land for it, and I believe this is an important component, and if that's the road we have to go down, then I think we have to do that, because I think this is an important opportunity to improve congestion in the area, and I don't think we should miss it. I would suggest those two sheets of ice could be converted into parkland that are out there at relatively low cost to the facility. But I'll let you guys battle that one out.
Thank you.
And I guess my only concern at this point that I wanted to share is the number of driveways to 16th. When I was first looking at this, I was looking at the 4 driveways. I think the driveway, I believe it's opposite Cordova, doesn't quite line up. It's how it exists now. I think it should line up. I think it's something maybe you should consider when you bring in the final plan. The driveway, I don't think that's Cordova, is it? Is it?
Cordova.
Okay. I guess, what's the street east of there then?
Denali would be the next.
Well, there's a slight offset of the driveway with Denali.
Denali would, I think, be here in an Eagle.
One more over. I think it's
Fairbanks?
it's slightly offset. Again, I don't think it meets
This
driveway
doesn't go all the
standards.
way, so it doesn't show that. So Fairbanks is the one then.
And I would just suggest that you know, maybe the driveway that does almost line up with Denali, the one to the west of that, might be redundant. You might consider eliminating that. But at the same time, we've all tried to get out of Sullivan Arena at the end of events, so maybe the more access out to 16th, the better. It's just something to consider when you bring in your final design. Wanted to make. You could view my notes. And I guess the only other point I wanted to make is I know you're not going to change the plan, and I appreciate the restriping of the existing parking lot over at Sullivan Arena to align with this, but I'd love to see some landscaping in that ugly old parking lot. Someday we'll get there. You know, I think that's a future phase. Next time some improvements come to Sullivan Arena, hopefully they can.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
That's all the comments I had, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Jim Sawhill. Joel Condon, please.
Yes. I appreciate the fact that you've demonstrated that you can do this secondary access. I think it's a viable solution. I think it's a good idea. I think you've done a good job with that. The only thing is this last-minute email that we get saying that you want to consider these other options, like some kind of parking facility. I'm assuming, where is it, 15th between Ingra and Gamble, something along those lines. And you say that you've demonstrated that you can do this secondary access, but will you do this secondary access if this other parking facility gets developed?
Through the chair, Commissioner Condon, yes, the language says that we're going to do something. So the question is, what's the best way to do that? There's no doubt, as Commissioner Sawhill mentioned, in particular, you get into that south parking area, you may as well bring a picnic lunch because you're going to be there for 45 minutes. So that's all part of it. The parking garage does not eliminate the need for additional access. What's going on there, I met with these guys, and they're still resolving their plan, but one of their proposals, for example, calls for shutting down 2 lanes of Gamble to, during events. And so that whole thing, I look at that and go, how in the world is that going to work? And so it's not so much that if the parking lot goes in or the parking garage goes in, that then we don't have to do this. It may actually, it will probably change the whole dynamic of how parking works over on that western side and the south side. And so therein lies the issue is how should parking empty? For example, there's a dedicated right-of-way on 21st that goes through this. Should that be in the mix? There are a lot of different ways of addressing traffic circulation, getting people in, getting people out, and it's just there's this gravity that finally it's like, well, let's stop let's consider a holistic approach to this parking. We dealt with it back in 2006 with what we knew then. Let's deal with it holistically with what we know now and get everybody in the same room talking about this, and let's figure it out holistically. Let's not do one thing now and find out we got to do another thing and we're running around the room, chasing rabbits. What we're trying to do is get our hands around the whole parking issue again. It's been 9 years. Before we commit a lot of money to resolving the parking, let's do it holistically, knowing what we know now. That's all we're trying to do is to get our arms around this animal.
Okay, but the only issue I have is, we're supposed to be voting on something tonight, but there's this wording in the background with this loophole that says, even though you approve this, then we can still, due to unforeseen circumstances, we could substantially alter what we think we might be approving tonight.
Through the chair, Commissioner Condon, one thing, of course, though, is it's your condition. I mean, you have to take ownership of it, of course, but we got to come back. And so we have to make a reasoned argument to what we're doing. We have to come back to this commission. So that, when we come back to the commission, I'm not sure that we're going to be able to afford whatever solution we come up with. But what we can tell you is you now have a condition that says we're going to resolve it by then. And that's a lot of teeth. What we just don't want to do is get strapped into a singular solution now. What we want to do is say, okay, we accept that an access is needed. We don't argue that. It's just where should these, we may be talking about 2 different access points, 1 different access point. We just don't know. We want to get our arms around the animal first. That's all we're asking for.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Jerry Winchester.
Thanks, Wayne. Just one quick question. The access that you're planning, this new one off of A Street, is one-way access only?
Through the chair, Commissioner Winchester, yes. Both the one on A that we're showing and the one on Gamble are both proposed to be one-way.
One-way going in?
The one on A Street would be one-way in as shown. And so it's a narrow road of 14, 12 feet, something like that, with a 5-foot walkway. The one going out on the east side onto Gamble would be one-way out onto Gamble, because that very parking lot I was talking about at the south end, my wife and I call it the dead zone. It's like the bottom layer of the ocean. You get into that, we got to get a way of getting those guys out. So with this, we have the ability to take that northern portion of the east lot, get them out on that northern exit, and then these guys, as well as the southern portion of that lot, can exit onto Gamble at this new one. We're also, with respect to what Commissioner Condon brought up, we're also trying to see if there. When we did the 2006 study, there was a lot of discussion that a lot could be resolved by dealing with the private property owner on the southeast. And so that's one of the things we kind of want to look at, is to see if there's any latitude there in land exchanges or any number of ways. That's just a little bit of the background. But, we want to revisit a lot of those assumptions and solutions we found in 2006 and come again holistically. So that's the parking discussion.
So there is a discussion about accessing out the south still going to be going?
We're going to look at it holistically. We're going to look at everything, revisit it, and we just want to have something that's a holistic solution. And, it was a 2006 study. We're addressing those, but 9 years, that's a long time in
it is in
this world.
A lot of changes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any more questions? Thank you, Mr. Adams.
Thank you very much.
I really appreciate that there's a lot of unforeseen situations, and there's a lot of work involved with all this planning, a lot of options. I know the time that it takes. And also, I think that you have addressed a lot of our concerns, and I do appreciate that. You know, you did the parking layout, you addressed the isolated parking spaces. Thank you for all your addressing tonight.
Thank you very much.
Can I get a positive motion? Any second motion? Okay, we have a motion to approve by Thomas Tiber, and it's seconded by James Howhill. Thomas, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to approve the review of case 2014-46, a draft design study report for the Chester Creek Sports Complex and Public Facility Site Plan and Landscape Plan review of the Mulcahy Stadium, subject to staff's recommendations 1 through 8, with the additional recommendation number 9, prior to final submittal, that the petitioner will resolve methods and means of providing an alternative access to CCSC parking, coordinating with key affected parties, including but not limited to ADOT, NPF, MOA Traffic, Fairview Business Association, and the Alaska DNR. And I'll offer my findings.
Thank you. Commissioner James Howhill, do you have any comments to your findings?
I would just suggest that maybe Mr. Tiber wants to speak to his findings first, and then I'll take my shot.
Certainly. Okay. Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I find that the proposal is consistent with requirements of Title 21 and the Comprehensive Development Plan, particularly specifically policies 44 and 78. And the proposal is consistent with the Anchorage Ballpark Natural Resource and Recreation Facility plans. I also wanted to note that I appreciate the petitioner taking our concerns into consideration and the adjustments they've made to their design based on those concerns. And I intend to support the motion.
Mr. Commissioner James Howhill.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I also intend to support the motion. I would concur with Mr. Tiber's findings and the analysis of staff that the proposed site plan meets the requirements of code, the long-range plan, and I would also like to thank the petitioner for addressing the concerns in his resubmittal, particularly the access to A Street. I think that's an important component of the project. I would also like to share with the Commission and ask for some additional discussion. I guess I would intend not to support condition number 9 and might want to consider removing that condition. I do understand that they have some approvals to get and concurrences from a lot of agencies, particularly DNR, which may be a difficult concurrence to get, but I think there are ways to make that happen. I think it's just important that our approval be very strong and that is a required component of the site design and approval. So I would appreciate some discussion from other board members on that issue. no sense making a motion to amend if it's not going to fly, but I'd just like to hear some other thoughts on that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Sawhill, I would just like to point that if we leave item number 9, they will come back for a final approval, and they should have a reason of why they move. If they take out the entry, it should be a reason, and we'll have a chance to take a decision then. I like the item number 9, but that's my thought. Now we go to Ed Leonetti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm actually in favor of the condition number 9, the way that it's written. Initially, I was going to add in parentheses to A Street, and then the petitioner mentioned that there's other possibilities, but certainly that is something that we could add in there, that to A Street. The petitioner mentioned that there's a possibility of the access going to the south. Where that is, what that is, hasn't been explored, but it gives them the opportunity to address our concern that there needs to be another exit out of the parking lot. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Jerry Winchester?
Commissioner, fellow commissioners, I intend to support the motion as written, and I think the reason is because I do support the idea that they explore every possible alternative, not necessarily A Street. I mean, there may be alternatives to the south that actually are better. Driven through that area many times, and another exit onto A Street is certainly needed, but if they can find something better that's an alternate means and methods, I think the way it's written, it clearly states they are going to provide another means of access to that area. So that's a foregone in my mind. That they would not dare come back and not provide that. Question is, do we give them the flexibility to go for any way they can do it that meets the requirements? So I'm willing to give them that because it's a very complex problem and involves a lot of people. And if they find a landowner on the south that's ready to say, yeah, I'm ready to come on my property and let me come south and go to Fireweed Lane, holy cow, would that change Mulcahy parking lot? So I'm just suggesting the wild alternative. So I'm going to support it. Thanks.
Thank you. Thomas Stiver, any comments?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I do share Commissioner Sawhill's concern that I think we were very clear during the last hearing that we wanted to see the second access. I think a radical change to, would not be viewed favorably. So I'm comfortable with condition 9 being in there. I think that the petitioner is aware of our feelings and of the commission, and that I'd like to give them the flexibility to seek out alternatives or try to herd the cats and build some consensus around their proposed solution. So that's my thought of it. I do share the concern of Commissioner Sawhill and not wanting to see a radical change. So. And
we have Joel Condon.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Sawhill on this number 9, that I believe that the petitioner has the flexibility that they need in order to explore various alternatives. Why does there need to be this verbiage that somehow I don't see the necessity of that condition. What I see is that we can move forward with this project, and it'll come before us again for final approval, and we'll consider what has been changed at that time. I don't see that condition 9 does anything beneficial to the process.
Commissioner Sawhill, please.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. Based on the discussion of the commission, I'm going to support the motion as stated, with the inclusion of condition number 9. So I think I'm ready to vote.
The motion is approved, 5-2. No? Oh, okay.
Did you vote?
The motion is approved, 6-2. Thank you, Mr. Dwayne Adams.
Thank you very much.
So we don't have any public hearings, no appearance request, and now we go to reports. Do we have any reports, maybe about the Three Bears
Yes.
document?
You all probably noticed you got a Three Bears report, our plans in your packet, and must have been wondering what are these for. And we were going to try and do that mock review of the new Title 21, using the Three Bears as an example. When we had met over at our offices several months ago, we had talked about doing a mock exercise on the new Title 21. And so we decided Three Bears project would be a good one to use. So Francis had the plans, so he went and sent those. He thought he was going to have time to prepare, so he had to write the case both ways. He wrote it under the old code, and then he wrote an entirely new version under the new code, and he was running out of time and didn't have time to finish his review using the new code, so it kind of got balled up. And so we're going to do it next month, but I want to stress, hang on to those drawings because we're not going to give those to you again next month, so save those and bring them with you next month. And in next month's packet, you'll get Francis's evaluation, for that project under the new Title 21. And then after the cases, I think there are 2 cases on the agenda for next month. When we finish with those, we'll have our little new Title 21 exercise.
Awesome, that's really good. So now, we get a motion to adjourn? Can we get a motion to adjourn the meeting? Oh, Ed, sorry.
I have a question. On that last case, I was going to make 2 conditions of approval. I had my button pushed, and I pushed it again and on and off, and now it's done, and almost didn't get voted. So what is the most effective way to do that? To just raise my hand like I just did, or say, Madam Chair, point of order?
Well, it appears here by order, so I was just clicking by order. I mean, I did not skip anyone that I saw here, so I don't know what
Okay.
happened.
When request to speak.
I went through it. I mean, I end with 0. You end with 0. You just go to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. So I'm just picking on the next one.
Yeah, so the way that the process that I understand it just went,
Yeah.
Commissioner Tibber made the motion, seconded, spoke to the motion, spoke to his motion. There was a condition in there that he wanted input from the commission from. That was done. I hit my button. I was going to speak to the motion, make another couple conditions, and then all of a sudden it was a vote. So I was like, oh, well, looks like I'm going to have to figure this out a little quicker next time. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Stop. And sorry, but I'm
okay.
just
Yeah.
going with that.
Yeah. It's the crying wolf not crying, huh? Yeah. So, it was discussed during the previous in what you had discussed. I had notes in here, which was why I didn't ask more questions. So, I guess the process would be see what they come back with, and then if it's not there, then add them then.
Well, they should have a reason, right? I mean, they have to have an explanation.
They were pretty simple. It was provide landscaping like you had suggested on the east side, and then provide ADA parking at Sullivan Arena. There's none shown currently in the bus lane. ADA parking at the Sullivan. The bus lane takes out, I think, what's there, but it's not really clear. Yeah. So. Yeah. So those are the 2 things. Yeah. So okay, next time I'll speak up.
Sorry.
Wave my arms.
I did try my best tonight.
Oh, you're good. That's all right.
Okay, can we have a motion to adjourn?
Excuse me, Madam Chair. I have a question for staff. So, is this Three Bears project? This is just experimental. This is not coming before the board. We have nothing to say about the problems associated with the facade on that, and it doesn't have a setback at 140 feet of 12 feet, and the roof modulation doesn't meet code requirements, and so we're not going to get a chance to comment on that. And you know, the presentation that this building makes to a national scenic byway, the Glen Highway, we don't get it. We don't have anything to say about that.
Commissioner Condon, that case, of course, is come and gone. So what we're going to do.
But what about the elevations that we got? I don't recall seeing these drawings.
Well, it's because under the old code, we didn't have any design standards for building elevations.
Yes, but they're in the website. No, they're not in the
They're
booklet.
in the new code.
They are in the new code,
And
but
so-
they're part of the old code. If you look at the small print at the bottom, they steer you to a web page that does have what is noted as the development and design standards.
Yeah, but UDC doesn't address the elevations. We don't discuss really the architecture. Our purview is really the site plan and landscape plan.
So who does do the analysis?
No
of-
one does.
Well, unless
so
it's
no-
residential, right? For residential.
Well,
projects.
we're
No,
let me
in
let me let me
large
explain.
commercial, it is in the development and design standards for large-scale development.
Yeah.
So let me explain. So under the old code, UDC is only looking at site plan and landscape plan review. That's all of their charge. We don't look at anything else. Under the new code, it's changed, and there are design standards that talk about the architecture of the building. So in the exercise that's coming up next month, you will be able to, looking at the code standards and addressing whether or not the building meets those standards or not. So it is an opportunity to do that exercise and run through those.
But even in the 2007 version of Title 21, it's very similar to the new Title 21. It's almost the exact wording about offsets and roof modulation. Whoever reviewed?
You mean for large retail establishments,
Yes.
you're saying, right.
Commercial
Right.
establishment.
Yes, we met with them, they come, it doesn't go to the commission. We met with them, they came for a meeting, we mentioned all of those things that we wanted some changes. Some of them we got and some of them we didn't get.
Even though it violates Title 21.
Well, it's a question of how, it's interpretation. We say, it doesn't meet it. We got some of, all I can say is we got some of what we wanted and some of the things we didn't get.
If I can interject real quick, the Planning and Zoning Commission reviews those elements and approves it. It's not urban design. That's the current code. The new code shifts to UDC, which is why it's being presented to us next week as a test, quote-unquote, case.
Right.
Yes.
So the new code, so if your question is who reviews it currently, it's the Planning and Zoning Commission. They review large retail establishments for compliance with the large retail establishment part of the code. Currently, Planning and Zoning reviews it.
But nonetheless, the code hasn't been followed.
Well, that's
It
the
has
purview.
not significantly changed.
That's the purview.
2007 and the new Title 21 are virtually the same in terms of roof modulation and in terms of wall offset.
Okay.
I'm just wondering
Yeah,
how this
you're right.
building ever got approved when
Right.
it's not a human scale and it's,
Yep. We weren't happy with how it turned out.
you're happy with?
No, we're not happy with how it turned out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe the meeting minutes that you can see for P&Z, maybe that would clarify something for, maybe there's something in there that.
I suspect, though, P&Z probably didn't review a lot of these because they actually gave that to staff, and so staff would make a lot
No,
of
it
review.
went to the
Those
commission.
before.
Did the commission
Yeah.
look at it? Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't, they didn't look at it.
Right,
And years ago.
Administrative, they
P&Z
don't.
Administrative review, but there wasn't an actual
Right.
P&Z review. Yeah.
This should be an interesting trial run with this.
So, yeah, so you all go through, when you get Francis's report and go through the code, and, it's an opportunity for you all to get familiar with the new code and look through all the sections and then come to the meeting being prepared to say, in terms of the architecture, how it meets it and how it doesn't meet it. And, of course, do the same thing with the site plan and landscape design. But, yeah, so we hope that you guys will, look through the new code and then come and ask questions.